All right, welcome. Take your seats. Well, we start. Okay. Welcome to law school. Your first lessons be on time, always in your seat at 1:15. I am happy to see you all. Orientation is one of those moments that I remember very clearly from law school. I walked in, I didn't know what I was doing. I couldn't tell you what a case brief was. I didn't know what a case was. I'd never read a decision of any sort. So this is a time for you to sort of experiment. Now, I will not be teaching you this year. My name is Josh Blackman. Maybe you'll have me next year, but I will not have you. The upshot is be honest, be candid. If you have questions, ask them. If you're not sure, come talk to me. Even if you want to come talk to me later, that's fine. My goal for today in my brief period here is to simulate what a 1L class looks like. And towards the end, I'll have questions. All right? All right, so let's start. Sophia Aliseda, you here?
Here.
Okay, what are the facts of the case? Did you read the case? What are the facts of the case? Pearson v. Post. Do you have it with you?
No.
They gave it to you, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Channing Alshouse.
Yeah.
Do you have the facts of the case? Okay.
So,
You're late. That's okay. No excuse. Okay. Do you have the facts of the case? It's my property. That's right. What happened?
Pearson came onto his property and killed the fox off his mid times and debating whether the fox is his property or not.
Okay, so let's go back to Sophia. Sophia, what did the lower court rule in this case?
In favor of the
Who's the defendant? Was there a gun involved? Did the case think about a gun? Okay. Let's see. Leslie Gonzalez? Who won in the lower court here? Who prevailed in the lower court? Who did the lower court rule for?
From what I understood, it was Torts.
Okay, so just remember, was Post the hunter or was Post the jerk who kind of came along at the last minute and took the fox? Who was Post? Oh, no, one at a time. Just no, you're right, but just one. Only speak one at a time, please.
So Pearson was the one who pursued the fox with the.
Confusing, right? Because they call them the defendant, right? But they don't say what their names are. All right, let's try. Who's next on my list? Logan Corley. Who was Pearson? Who was Post?
So Pearson came along and ended up killing the fox, whereas Ludwig Post was pursuing the fox with his tail.
So Post was the hunter with the dogs and everything else, right? And Pearson was the jerk. Okay, everyone get that? So why is the case called Pearson versus Post? Why does Pearson's name come first?
So it's in an appellate court, like judicature. So in the lower court, the court ruled in favor of Post, and Pearson is assuming that rule to the higher court.
Okay, very good. So this is a trick which you can all use, and I think Logan mentioned it well. You always have a case name, right? A versus B, right? Jones versus Smith. Why does one name come before the other name? Almost every case you read is an appellate decision. That is, it was a trial court opinion, and then someone filed an appeal. Why would you appeal a lower court ruling? Is that Shayna Cross?
Nine.
Oh, sorry, Shania. Shania, why would you appeal a lower court ruling? You lost, right? The losing party appeals. So, Shania, let me ask you a question. In an appellate court, the name that comes first, Pearson. Did Pearson win in the lower court or lose in the lower court? That's right. So there you got a trick, right? You learned something, at least something today, right? Even if you don't remember who's who, the person whose name came first lost. In this case, Pearson, the jerk, lost in the lower court. One of the hard parts about cases is the judges often say plaintiff and defendant. But the plaintiff and defendant are terms in the trial court. On appeal, they might be called something else. Appellant, appellee. You'll see this. All right. All right. So now we have Christian Gonzalez. Okay, Christian, thank you so much. And I realize I have two different seating charts. I'm just going down one. I'll switch to the other one in a few minutes. People think, oh, they skipped my name, right? By the way, I'm going alphabetically in case you can figure it out. This is what law school will look like on Monday. Teachers will call by the alphabet. They'll call up and down the rows. Some professors use a random number generator. I go up and down the row, so no one's actually in the front row, so you got no one's willing to endure that. But I'm just going alphabetically to make life easier. All right, so Christian, let me ask you this question, please. The trial court ruled for Post the Hunter. Why did the trial court rule for Post the Hunter?
They said that the Post the Hunter, that his pursuit was.
The trial court, I'm asking. Why the trial court?
The trial court found that Post's pursuit of the fox like that was occupancy.
Oh, what's occupancy? See, this with law school, when you give an answer that's good, you get follow-up questions. It's almost this curse, right? But it's correct. What's occupancy? What's that word mean?
That's the word I picked up.
You're 100% correct. It's a very important word, actually. So what does it mean? Occupancy. No, hand down. I'll call one at a time. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but
The right to the animal.
okay. Let's switch to the other roster. Aricia Amaro. Okay. What's occupancy?
It's property of or having the physical possession of the.
Physical possession. So, did Post the Hunter actually physically possess the fox?
Post, he did not.
He did not. So then, let me ask you a follow-up, please. How did the trial court say that the hunter had occupancy?
Because of the use of the hounds.
The hounds. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Okay, good. Sarah Beck. Okay, Sarah. So the case goes to appeal, right? There were two opinions, right? The majority and the dissent, right? What did the majority hold? Yeah, what Judge Tompkins hold? Okay, why? Is the hunt, according to the majority, was the hunt by itself enough to acquire the fox? Why not? So for the majority, you want to give us the rule, Sarah? What's the holding of the majority? What's the rule of the majority? Well, that's the outcome, right? But why? When I asked for the rule, what's the rationale? You already said it. You said it a moment ago, right? What's the majority's rule? The rule of the case? Bodily possession is necessary, right? I think that's a good holding for the case. Julie Bonowitz? Julie Bonowitz, not here. Okay. Allison Brock? Okay. Allison, so the rule that we just got from Sarah a moment ago is that bodily possession is necessary to acquire an animal. Let me ask you a question. What about if you're hunting a whale instead of a fox? Can you kind of just wrap your arms around a whale? Okay. What if you want to capture honeybees? Can you just like put a bee in your hand? Does that work? No, right? Might there be some cases where something other than bodily possession is the only way of capturing it? Maybe like a harpoon to shoot a whale, or maybe a net or a trap to capture bees. So, does the majority say that bodily possession is always necessary? No, the rule's a little more complicated, isn't it? Olivia Carlton? Why might the majority's rule, which seems so clear at first, sort of break down very quickly?
Because you don't necessarily need to have killed it to
Oh.
protect it. And there are situations where, they did say at one point they just said fully captured.
Fully. Ooh, so read carefully. Good, right. If you read the majority, I think the rule that Sarah gave us was correct. But judges often kind of, how do we say it, like hedge. They're like, well, here's a rule, but the rule is not absolute, right? It's not like a bright line rule where there might be some kinds of animals where physical possession is not possible. So maybe you have to use a weapon like a harpoon or a spear. Maybe you have to use a net or a trap, right? It's not always possible to physically capture it. So then what is the rule then, though, right? Is this Ernie? Ernie Castruita? Okay, not here. Drew Douglas? So then, Drew, do you want to take another stab? What might the rule of the case be? If it's not physical possession is always required, maybe what's the rule then?
This is what I put.
Please, good. Tell me what you put. That's fine.
Okay, I put pursuit along personal property right to huntsman. Pursue hunting, but to have seek possession of the animal, it would be under the rule of captures.
Oh, you said a lot of good things there. So a couple. That's Drew, right? Drew, what is pursuit?
Pursuit is chase the animal or
Uh-huh.
have an interest in it.
Does pursuit alone, according to the majority, give you a right to the fox? No. Now, Christina Gonzalez. Yes, Christina. Now, your friend Drew a minute ago mentioned the rule of capture. I don't know what this is. What is this rule of capture he speaks of? What does that mean? Obtain. What does it mean to obtain an animal? How do you take into your possession? Oh, see, you did the circle. I'm asking what the rule of capture is. You gave me obtain, take, remember the capture. It's a circle. Let's try it again, right? How do we define the rule of capture without using the word capture? Oh, that's a challenge, right?
It would be an animal by setting a trap.
But does setting a trap mean you have bodily possession? You touch them with your hand? So the trap is like an extension of your property? So it's not enough to have physical bodily touch, which I think what was said a few minutes ago. You can do other stuff. Jack Hemlitz? Want to try it, Jack?
Yeah,
How do you define rule of capture?
the rule of capture itself, pursuing animal
There it is. That's what I was looking for. All right. That's what I was looking for. Okay, good. Natural liberty. What does natural liberty mean, my friend?
actually going on free will.
Do animals have free will? It's like a philosophical class. My goodness. I mean, I don't know. I mean, do animals have a soul? I mean, what do you mean animals to act on their free will? Just spell that out for me, please.
So the animal act in pursuit, I would say, is not acting on its own free will, it's acting in response to it.
Oh, that's interesting. So animals, they're not thinking. They're just running away from whatever threat's being posed.
If you're chasing it after said animal, your act of chasing it via hounds or
Oh, that's interesting.
It's natural liberty to an extent that you're imposing an unequivocal intention of appropriating the animal to its individual use.
Whoa, unequivocal intention of appropriating animal to a particular use. Did I get that right? I think I said all those words. Unequivocal. Say it one more time so everyone else can hear. I think I botched the words. All right, Hannah, you here? What did you just say? What the hell did you just say? One more time, just real more time. This is actually a very important sentence. If this is not highlighted in red in your case, you should now. One more time, please. Check.
In total context or
Just the means manifesting.
manifests an unequivocal intention of appropriating the animal to do his individual use.
All right. What does that mean? In the case. Okay, good. What would it actually mean to deprive an animal of its natural liberty, right? Or let me ask the question differently. When an animal is at its natural liberty, where does it go? What does it do? No, if it has its natural liberty, where does an animal go? What does it do? Goes this way, goes that way, goes up, goes down, right? Hannah, if you deprive an animal of its natural liberty, where does it go? The zoo. You're funny. Yeah, but why? Why is it going to the zoo? That's creative. Can it choose where it goes? Who's controlling where it goes? The people, right? The hunter. Or it goes to the zoo, perhaps the taxidermist, right? Gets stuffed. But these guys were not hunting for a zoo. They were hunting for the trophy case. All right. So Melanie, we have this Melanie Haltham here. Okay, thank you, Melanie. So we have this concept of this natural liberty. Did post hunter deprive the animal of its natural liberty? Why not? Ooh, but see, capture is not necessary. See, that's the important point of this case. Capture does not mean physically capturing it, right? The court says is even if you don't physically capture it, if you deprive the animal of its natural liberty, that's enough to obtain ownership. So the question one more time: did the hunter post deprive the fox of its natural liberty? Why not? How do we know that? There's a very easy answer. It's not obvious.
The fox could go wherever.
Yes. Did the fox stop running at any point because of the actions of the hunter? Fox went wherever he wanted to go, right? There we go. So the holding, going back to Sarah's point a couple of minutes ago, it's not just physical occupation is necessary for capture. The court entertains another possibility. The other possibility is if you deprive an animal of its natural liberty. In other words, even if you don't get there, let's say you corner it so it can't go anywhere else. That may be enough to own, to acquire, to capture the animal. All right. So you think in your notes, oh, clear, bodily touch, right? One sentence, but it takes actually a couple sentences to describe the holding of the case. So when a professor says, what's the holding of the case? You're going to give something at first, and then you realize, wait a minute, that's not adequate, right? This is why your commercial outlines are not very helpful, because they're not going to go 5 levels deep like that. They'll just give you the first level. And what marks a professor that you're really prepared is ability to penetrate further under the surface. All right, that's the majority rule. But there was a dissent. Travis, Hlavinka? Travis, all right, so let's talk about the dissent, right? The dissent by Judge Livingston. What did the dissent say?
It says that pursuit could be enough in a different equation to constitute capture.
Okay. So who did the dissent rule for? Or who would the dissent have ruled for? Post. Who would the dissent have ruled for? Post. Okay. Okay, good. Just make sure we get right. The majority ruled for Pearson, the jerk, because he actually got the damn fox, right? Without question, he deprived the fox of his liberty because he got the thing in his hands. But the dissent would have rendered it for the hunter post. Now, is that Kirsten Keys? Kirsten, why did the dissent rule in favor of the hunter post?
Probably of animals, should be able to be acquired without bodies that
Correct.
they have a reasonable chance.
Ooh, good. If they have, say it again one more time. Exactly right. Okay, very good. So Nathan Lee, where's Nathan? Nathan. So just one more time, Kirsten, just read that one more time. That's the important sentence. All right, Nathan. So your call now, right? What does it mean to have a reasonable chance of taking the animal under your control?
Have an opportunity to take it under control or.
Yeah, that's the word reasonable. Use different words than she just said, right? If you define something with the words that she said, you're not doing much, right? What does it mean to have a reasonable chance of taking control of the animal?
Reasonable.
You did it again. See, it's hard. That's why defining capture with the rule. Yeah, good law school trick. Don't use the word to define the word because then you're in a circle. Plausible. Well, let me ask you the question more differently. If you did your torts reading, this might be a little bit familiar. What does reasonable mean, Nathan? Uh-oh.
That makes sense.
Makes sense to whom? What person? A reasonable person? One might say. No, that's a good. Roger Mackey.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. What does it mean to have a reasonable chance of taking the animal? What does reasonable mean here?
Well, reasonable probably means what most people would consider the amount of effort that it would take.
Okay. Effort. What does effort have to do with it? Why'd you say the word effort? That's a good word.
You're trying to capture and brought a dog.
What do you call that? Maybe what's a synonym for effort? The dissent uses this word over and over again. Labor. Let's go back to the other seating charts. I'll probably screw this up. I'm sorry. Aliyah Kawaja? Aliyah, what's labor in the context of hunting? What does labor mean? As a society, do we like to reward people who work hard? Why? Why? No. I'm talking to her. Just one at a time. Yeah. Okay. Allison Kling?
Yeah.
Okay. Allison, let me ask you this question. Does the majority opinion reward labor?
No.
Why not?
Well, you could make the argument that yes, it does, because there might have been some labor taken to capture or like harm the animal itself. But
Who did more work here, Post the hunter or Pearson the jerk?
Post doesn't do it.
Because you had the dogs and all the other stuff, right? So then, Maya Mokrick, why does the dissent want to reward the hunter? He kind of develops this at some length.
He states that he's done service to his community.
Oh, so you're similar to what I said a minute ago, right? You're helping the. What's the service to the community here? Foxes are bad. Why are foxes bad? They're pests. They eat chickens. They torment the wildlife, right? So the dissent says we're going to adopt a rule that would reward the labor, right? So what's the rule? I think actually Kirsten said a minute ago. Let's try it again. Indira Morales? What's then the rule that the dissent adopts? How would you describe the rule the dissent adopts? I'm going to start walking around because I stayed to put him long enough. So if you're a hunter within reasonable reach of the animal, it's yours. Okay, so you know what my follow-up question is going to be, right? How close is reasonable? 1 feet, 5 feet, 10 feet, 20 feet, 50 feet? How close is reasonable? But you're a lawyer. You're gonna be a lawyer in a couple of years, right? God willing, we're all gonna be lawyers, right? How do you know what reasonable is? How's a judge to know what a reasonable period is? Devin, Nick, Devin, how would a judge know what a reasonable prospect of capturing the fox is? How can a judge possibly know that?
I'm kind of hazy on this. I remember
Since you guys talking about, in describing the labor that was done, he talks about, stratagems and strength that were nearly exhausted and all the efforts put forth by the hunter to apprehend the fox.
How do you measure that? I mean, you're telling me all good stuff, but how do you actually quantify it? How do you measure that? I mean, isn't this the difficulty, right? I wish I knew your names. I have a seating chart usually when people are here. Allison Nolan? So, Allison, is the majority opinion rule easy to apply, easy to follow?
And yes, yeah,
Why?
because it makes pretty clear the elements that you need to have, which is, that you have to, that possession is alone is not equal possession.
Yeah. Good.
As both Princeton and Missouri made clear that Pearson was a jerk, but regarding that,
Good.
did not.
Yeah. Is a dissent easy to apply, the dissent rule?
I did not find it very easy to find.
Yeah, why not? Tell me, please.
I just didn't find it, because you can't say what's reasonable. It's not, it doesn't have a very.
Welcome to law school. Welcome to law school. So, thank you. Very good, Allison. Okay. So, let me try to summarize a bit, right? The majority opinion, maybe you think it's good or bad, but it's easy to follow, right? If you actually capture the fox, you win, right? In this case, Pearson got the fox. He has the evidence in his hand, right? There were no smartphones back then. People weren't recording their hunts and live streaming them, right? All you got is the actual evidence of the damn fox. So he's got the fox. Well, that Post, what's his evidence, right? Mark Owens. What evidence does Post have? I mean, you're his lawyer. What evidence do you bring to court? He doesn't have the fox. What do you have?
Yeah, his intent was to hunt the fox.
But I'm asking you a different question. You're his lawyer. What evidence do you have in court? Because you don't have the fox to show. What evidence do you have? How do you make your case?
I mean, it's hard to make the case.
Why is it hard? You're right. Tell me why it's hard.
Because putting it to like another thing, I don't know. I'm trying to go get this gold, right? But somebody else grabbed it.
Right.
It doesn't mean that the gold's mine because I told somebody else.
How would Post prove the amount of time he spent hunting? How many hours? Is there a way to prove that?
I guess by outside sources, people seeing him
Maybe.
hunt.
How many dogs he had?
How
Maybe.
many dogs? I mean, could he have had weapons with the intent to kill? I mean,
Do we know how close he got to the damn fox? Is there any? Was there a measuring stick? A measuring tape?
it doesn't say, and
So how can you ever? Thank you for that, Mark. Ailey Rains. Rains. Oh, did I say it wrong? I'm sorry. I got it. Was your middle name. I'm sorry. Caroline. It's okay. Oh, that's okay. How can you ever actually follow the dissent rule? How would a judge ever know if you have a reasonable process of taking the animal? How can you ever actually do that?
It was hard for me to wrap my mind around it because I started thinking about the whole fish concept you were talking about. Like, you know what a drop line is?
You can tell me. Yeah, sure. Tell me. Oh, I see.
You're lining the hook. You captured that animal. You have to physically restrain.
Do you go hunting? Do you hunt? Do you hunt or do you fish?
Yes, sir.
Well, let me ask you a question. There was at least one hunter in the class. Which rule would you follow as a hunter? The majority of the dissent rule? I'm asking you. I'm asking you, Caroline. I'm asking you right here. Whatever. Well, if you were the judge in this case, Caroline, how do you rule? Majority of the dissent. Who do you give it to, the jerk or the hunter? I'm asking you. 200 years ago, I'm asking you to try it again. You'd give it to the jerk? Why?
He's the one that physically restrained the animal, and as much as I
So let's talk about fairness for a minute. It's actually my least favorite word in the English language. I think it's like the F word, fairness. I don't like it. It's a four-letter F word. Scott Mason? Scott Mason? No? Marianne Mendoza? I'm sorry, Marianne Mendoza. Which rule do you think is more fair, Marianne? The majority or the dissenting rule? Oh, I like your answer. Okay, tell me why. Hmm. Hmm. Oh, so we get to that in a minute. Let's talk about the ancient writers. What's going on there?
What they were following was really active. So they didn't say was saying how like we're in different times and that we should.
Oh, so the next name I have is Kamisha. Kamisha, let me ask the same question. Which do you think was more fair, the majority or the dissent?
I think the majority. It was kind of like one of the things like you gotta be implicit in that. Like even though people.
Oh, so the quickest person gets it. You snooze, you lose.
Yeah, I think it was somewhere mentioned like if you could see the person pursuing the animal and still like saw it.
You got ahead of him. So the rule of capture, you think, is more fair than the labor theory, dissent. All right. So I think we sort of teased out. Let me just sort of take a step back. We have two different rules in this case, right? The majority follows the rule of capture, and the dissent follows what's called the labor theory, right? The rule of capture says generally you need bodily touch, bodily possession, although you might be able to deprive it of its natural liberty, depending on the animal. Think of the whale, right? But the dissent follows the labor theory. That is, you reward the person who invests more labor into the hunt. And there's some pros and cons of these rules, which I think we've sort of teased out. The rule of capture is very easy to follow. It's a very clear, easy to administer policy because the guy's got the fox. I forgot it. I have a stuffed fox in my office. I forgot it. I'm sorry. I forgot my damn prop. Okay. But, the guy's got the fox. Okay, you have the evidence, right? And again, there's no phones back then. There's no cameras. You don't know what was going on. He's got the evidence. But the drawback of the rule of capture is, what'd you say? It's not courteous. What's the word you used? Caroline? Indecent. Decency. That's where. Yeah, it's not decent, right? This guy was being a jerk. 1 second, Devin. Right? He came along and stole the fox out of nowhere. So the labor theory that rewards fairness. The guy who worked hard should get it. Is it Devin, right? See, I get the names pretty quick once I get rolling. Okay, go ahead.
I just think that I thought that one of the stronger moments for me was when he was talking about labor being put in strategies and strategies put in so he's made exhausted, and then the opportunistic hunter comes in and then
Yeah.
I think I like that reasoning, but I kind of was wishing that it would have been fleshed out a little more with maybe some like more situational examples. For instance, like if he discussed the danger that arises if another hunter knowingly tries to intercept a hunt that's going on, those two could also end up maybe harming each other. Conflict. Right.
So imagine what happens is Pearson swoops in at the last minute and then Poe shoots him.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, even by accident, maybe like by accident, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so conflict, right? So the rule of capture can conflict with the labor theory. Yeah, what's your name? Just say your name, please. Very good. Neither do I. I don't hunt.
It's kind of like shot the fox with bow and arrow and like the leg or the butt, like not necessarily a full shot.
Oh, he wounded it. Well, let me ask you the question: would putting an arrow in the fox's leg deprive it of its natural liberty if you're slowing it down? I think the answer is yes. And this is why physical touch is not always required. Yeah, what's your name? Drew, go ahead. Oh, there are two Drews. There are lots of people with the same name. Just you get used to it. Okay, tell me why.
I believe that an animal that, in your case, you're saying that's deprived of its natural liberty still has a chance of escape.
Even if wounded, could still. So the wound has to be maybe a mortal wound, a wound that would actually. I mean, eventually, if you hit an animal with a bow and arrow, just keep it simple. It may not die right away. It may bleed out in a couple hours. Is that a kill shot? To use Sarah's phrase? Is that a kill shot if it bleeds out in a couple hours?
Yes, but it's a big piece of impairing that natural liberty. Because you don't know for sure that at the moment that it is a kill shot.
You don't know.
It is for nature to decide whether it's a kill shot or not. It's not.
And then, of course, what happens if another predator comes along and takes it in the meantime? All right, someone hasn't maybe spoken yet. Yeah, what's your name?
Shane.
Shane.
Had picked up this animal with a wound, and the animal doesn't die right away,
Mm-hmm.
later. Would that play more into post in pursuit of him
Yeah.
shooting, with a bow and arrow at the animal? Then Pearson comes and takes the animal, didn't necessarily kill the animal in that moment, and then it died later.
Mhm.
So then at that point, how would that work between those?
Do you think the majority would? Do you think the rule of the majority answers that sort of very complicated fact pattern?
Kind of, anyway.
So this is one of law students' favorite things is to take the facts of the case and change them, and change in a way that it's almost impossible to answer. Law students love doing this. And by the way, this. No. You're Shane's doing the exact right thing, and let me explain why. And I'll start talking for a bit. We can. If I didn't call on you, you just consider yourself lucky to the alphabet. Um, why are we doing this? Why on your orientation day did I give you a case from the 1800s about hunting foxes? Did any of you ask yourself that question this week? Be honest. Why am I giving you this case using all these Latin phrases, which none of you guys did? By the way, did you look up the Latin? Good for you. If you didn't, I forgot to ask that question. Somebody, what does this mean, right? Look up the damn Latin. Have to look it up. I know it's not going to make sense. You just look it up. Black's Dictionary. It's on Westlaw. You learn to use it. You can use Google. It's not ideal, but just learn to use a legal dictionary. But like, why am I giving you these cases about Justinian, right? Roman emperors. Pufendorf, right? Who the heck is Pufendorf? Did any of you Google Pufendorf? Good. He's a philosopher, right? Barbarac was a French philosopher. Why am I giving you this stuff? Our legal system that exists today is based in large part on stuff that came before. I think, was it Marianne? Yeah, Marianne says, why are we looking at this old stuff? We'll get used to it, right? Almost every legal rule that we have today is based on something that happened yesterday, right? The law is not born anew every day. That's not how our legal system works. Your first year of law school is going to be entirely reading cases, not statutes, not things enacted by actual elected people, judges. And these judges decide disputes in what's called the common law process. And I could teach a semester on what the common law means, but at a general level, common law refers to deciding one case at a time, where a rule is established in this case about hunting foxes. And maybe a couple years later, there's a case about hunting ducks. And then maybe a couple years later, there's a case about hunting whales. By the way, this is the first week of property class. You have foxes, ducks, and whales. Those are the three cases. I'm not making this up. And the judge will say, well, he was a rule for foxes, but hunting a whale is different. These are big things. You got to use harpoon in the boat. You can't, put your hand around a whale too big, right? And to Shane's question a minute ago, every time a judge has to decide a case, the facts can be a little bit different, right? Because the facts are the same, you know what the answer is, right? The common law method of reasoning, what 1L's first year law students do, is to take a case, take some rule, and then apply it to different facts. Are the facts similar, or are the facts distinguishable? And if the facts are distinguishable, does it go left? Does it go right? Does it go up? Does it go down? In other words, if the facts are a little bit different, if you're hunting a whale instead of hunting a fox, should the case come out differently? And unfortunately, Marion, I'm sorry, you need to know the old stuff, right? So I don't know, it's okay. You don't have to like it, but you have to do it, right? In law school, you don't have to necessarily like what you're doing, but you have to know how to do it well. Just if we like it or not, it's not really. It's not up to us what we learn. The law is what it is, at least for the most part. But you have to know how the law got there, right? So why are there rules about hunting foxes? Because in the Roman times, they were hunting foxes. In the times of the ancients, they were hunting foxes. This is not a new problem. Then again, people started hunting foxes not for food or to destroy pests, but also for sport. Right? These guys had their dogs and their hounds and their horns and other stuff. This became a like kind of an aristocratic sport. Should the aristocratic hunter be treated the same way as a farmer trying to save his chickens? Right? There are often very difficult questions over how this ancient stuff can carry over to the present. But that's what the 1L process is like. You're reading all these old cases about selling cows and hunting foxes and broken factories and these various obscure issues to try to teach you a couple things. So the very first question that poor Sophia got, I'm sorry,
I didn't even have it pulled up, but it's
I actually looked at the charts. And I'm like, I feel bad for Sophia. I was like, you didn't know it yet, but I knew it's wrong. I'm gonna hit her right in the square. So I'm sorry. Like it's like you're A, you're right there in the first letter. But you have to know a couple things. One, what are the facts of the case? Cold, you have to do that cold. Not looking at your notes, you should do that cold, right? I promise you, every professor will ask you that question. What are the facts of X versus Y? That's the first question you can get. If I'm wrong, you come to my office, I'll say I'm sorry. But like on Monday, you'll have class, someone will ask you, what's the facts? Yeah. Okay. All right, let's do this, right? When a professor asks you what are the facts of the case, there's a balance, right? You can go on and talk for 10 minutes just about the facts of the case, give every little detail. But when you're giving the facts of a case, you should have in mind the second question, which is what is the rule of the case, right? If you know what the rule of the case is, then you know which facts to include. So for example, if in this case, the rule of the majority is bodily touch is enough for capture, but you might acquire it through depriving of natural liberty. It might make sense to say Post was hunting the animal, he was chasing it, but he never physically captured it, never got there. Pearson came around and he physically captured it. Therefore, under the rule of capture, Pearson prevailed. See what he just did? The impressive answer is when you ask for the facts, you give the rule in the process, right? Because you anticipate the next question, right? When you're giving facts, anticipate the rule. Now, when you're stating the rule, which is the second part, no matter what rule you give, it's probably not going to be good enough, right? Because all these rules always have exceptions, right? And carve-outs and caveats. And you need to know the various twists and turns. So I forget who said natural liberty, reasonable prospect. These are all kind of like hedges where you are able to assert the rule, but understand it's not right line. And then we get to sort of policy questions, which students tend to hate. Is this a fair rule? Does it provide certainty? Right? Does it reward labor? Does it, who said benefit society? Some over there, someone said that, right? These are the sorts of things that show the professor that not only did you read the case, but you understood it. I mean, look, this was what, 6 or 7 pages long? How long did it take you? A couple hours? Yeah, it should have. If you did this in less than an hour, probably wasn't good enough. You're not, how do I put this? You don't know how to read ancient English law stuff yet, right? It's a language that, yeah, you're shaking out, you're right. It's a language that looks familiar, right? All the words, like, oh, I know these words, but you can read a sentence and be like, what did I just read? Right? It's like, what? So you might have to read the cases twice. If you're reading on Monday, if you need to read a case twice straight through and it takes you 2 hours to read a 5-page case, that's okay. You'll develop speed, right? You'll get better with time. But the ability to read it coherently is tough. Yes, Allison?
Yes,
Oh,
there's a
okay,
lot.
good. No, I know, but actually I was good. She got one of them, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Which also is like, well, you can't sue someone for trespass that was never your property. But so like trespass is not going to be mentioned at all.
Well, someone said private property. Who said private? It wasn't private, it was public. I didn't want to correct that point. It was actually, they're on a beach. It wasn't clear from the case, it was actually public property. Trespass doesn't just mean you're on private property. Trespass refers to trespass to the fox itself. That the fox was the property. You'll learn this in torts, but there's trespass, what's called the chattels. 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 The chattel is a physical thing, like a book or a bottle or whatever it is, a fox. So the actual claim was that Pearson trespassed on Post's fox. Post says even before Pearson got there, the fox belonged to Post. That was the trespass. Yeah, someone said, yeah, no, I know, but someone said private. I didn't want to get to that point yet because I had other things I want to talk about. Yeah, by the way, professors will not always stop you if you're wrong. So be careful. You can't correct everything. You got to pick your battles. It's absolutely true, right? You have only 100, hour and 20 minutes, whatever the class is, 2 hours, whatever your class is. You can't do everything. Yes. Remember your name?
Alicia.
Aricia, yes.
So going back to like the dissenting opinion, and you're saying that they use the labor theory in that, would Post injuring the fox, would that count as like evidence to show his pursuit of?
Well, Post didn't injure in this case, though. Well, look, if Post injured the fox and it was a mortal wound, then he'd win under the rule of capture. Right? You have these two rules, rule of capture and labor theory, that are at odds with each other. Right? But I think if you're actually able to exert a mortal wound, even the labor theory would not give you to the other guy.
Even if it was just an injury and not a mortally injured.
Might be enough. Might be enough.
as evidence.
Yeah, imagine you threw a rock and hit him in the head and like, oh, he kind of got disoriented and then he ran away. That might be enough. Yes. And just your name, please? Travis.
When I think of natural liberty, I think of fox has to be, if it escapes pursuit, in the same state it was before the pursuit began.
Oh, that's an interesting way to put it. So basically, you're restoring him to how he was before the hunt even began.
Right.
That's interesting. Okay. Oh, you got to raise your hand. Yeah, Marianne.
I guess I wasn't pointing out that like Livingston also added that the situation or like the case should have been like handled by sportsmen.
Ah, yeah. So why is this even in the courts? Why is this not being decided by sportsmen? I'm asking you.
Oh,
The question. See, my voice inflected upwards. Right. I'm Ron Burgundy, right? Yeah.
like
Caroline, you want to take it?
or the important we're looking for law because especially going from land to water, if you're talking about hunting fish, like that's all in the same category. And so if you're gonna take from hunting to even like on water fish, even whaling, fish for a bass or something, say maybe a fisherman injured a fish. Does that mean he gets to claim that fish?
How do hunters resolve disputes among your friends and family members? Well, isn't that an issue, right? If you have private land, there's no tragedy of the commons. Ooh. All right, I want to take time for Q&A, maybe a couple more questions in the case, and we'll actually go to just law school in general. Those questions in the case. Yes, ma'am, what's your name? Bailey.
Judge Livingston basically saying, like we had talked about, it had to be in reach. So we said, like, that's kind of objective, like how, like, your in reach could be like 2 steps, but my in reach, I could say, would be like 5 steps. Or
Yeah, I have longer arms than you do, right?
yeah, or like labor, right? Like I could waste your time in 5 minutes, or I could waste somebody else's time in an hour.
That's right.
But how would Judge Livingston like answer those questions?
That's one of the big criticisms of labor theory. It's very hard to follow. It sounds good in practice. When you actually drill down to reality, it's not very easy to apply. And I don't know that he would have answered your question. I think he would say, let the sportsman figure this out. Just leave me alone. Right? Why are you bothering with this stupid fox? We have more important stuff to deal with. Maybe one more question. Someone who's new hasn't spoken yet. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. You spoke, but go ahead. Christian, was it?
Yeah.
Good.
I'm not sure if I read it wrong, but did the majority of dissenting not both sides of Barbie? Yeah.
Barbarac.
But they came to different conclusions.
Ain't that something, huh? So I don't have time for this today, but I teach this class for about 2 hours. I can do 2 hours in just this one case. But Barbarac was a French philosopher who studied labor theory, and his work was based on John Locke. That name sound familiar? Ring a bell? John Locke is the father of labor theory, who's not cited in these cases, one of the big mysteries, but Barbarac was. And I don't want to bore you, but I think the majority misreads Barbarac. I think the Senate actually has Barbarac correctly. I think the majority reads Barbarac too narrowly. But you're right; they cite the same authorities, they come out different ways. How is that the two smart lawyers can can come out different ways? I mean, and by the way, these were not bad judges. Justice Livingston became a U.S. Supreme Court justice, and Judge Tompkins became the governor of New York and vice president of the United States. These were very influential people in their society, and they came out 180 degrees at face. All right, let me talk for about 10 minutes about law school in general. So again, I apologize, especially for Sophia, for doing this, but I'm sorry. I just looked at the roles and I'm like, oh, she's gonna get it, right? But law school is going to be different than we've had before. Maybe you're coming straight from college. Maybe you had a couple gap years in the middle. Maybe you worked in industry. You've done different things. This is different. The level of effort that will be required of you is at a much different order of magnitude in college. You're all very smart, right? You all probably had good grades in your undergraduate class. You did well. You're top of your class. Um, you can't all be the same here, right? Now, the good part is it's not based on some sort of innate ability, right? I don't think that for a minute. There can be some people it might come a little bit easier to, but law school requires hard work. The first and most important thing you have to do is stay up with the readings. Stay up with the reading. Don't fall behind. If you are not prepared, trust me, we'll know, right? Don't fake it. Your professors will handle this differently, but some professors, if they call on you and they see you're not prepared, which we can smoke out pretty quickly, they will come back to you over and over again, right? So I did that to Sophia just to show that works, right? Even if you say you're not prepared, I'll come back to you to evaluate what someone else just said. So find some way of calling upon you. Don't fall behind. Don't get lazy. A lot of students fall into the trap of using these horn books and commercial outlines. They're fine for supplements, but you can't rely on them entirely. They're almost misleading. And look, I actually make a supplement, so I'm gonna get interest, but it has to just be that, to supplement, to add on to it. If you don't keep with the readings, you'll never catch up. Before you know it, you'll have a midterm, and before you know it, with a final exam. You say, "Oh, I'll watch the lecture on Zoom later." Right? No, you won't. You'll never do it. Right? Oh, I'll get notes from my friend. Oh, that's not good because you won't learn anything that way. Oh, my friend took this class 3 years ago, gave me his outline. Oh, that's even worse, right? Because it's out of date. Make your own outline. If you have a study group, that's fine, but make sure you're doing your own work. Get to know your professors. You'll have what 80 or 90 people in your section. I don't have the counts here, but it's about 80 or 90 people. It's very hard for professors to know who you are if you're just one of 90. Right? They may know your name, they know what you look like, where you sit, and not much more. But the way to distinguish yourself is to actually talk to them. Raise your hand and ask questions. Go to their office hours. We're here. We're in the building. All the offices are on 6th and 7th. Just walk around the hall and see who's there. Right? The worst thing in the world is when I get a student saying, "Hey, can I have a letter of reference?" I'm like, I don't know who this person is. Right? I know you got my grade. I can give you a grade, but I just don't know who you are. I'm looking at your picture and scene chart. I was like, I don't know. So get to know your professors, right? Get to know your classmates. The legal world is painfully small. Everyone knows everyone else. And the people sitting here to your left and your right, they're not just going to be your classmates. In 5 years, will be your co-counsel or opposing counsel or a judge on the bench, right? The relationships you make here are very important. The law school has lots of extracurricular activities. We have a club for everything. I don't care what you're interested in. We have a club for it. Get involved, right? Meet people. Now you see, I'm giving you all these things you have to do. It's like, oh, but Josh, you say you have to do your reading? Yeah. The amount of time you're reading each week should be a full-time job. You might be reading 30, 40 hours a week on top of class. That's it. Your legal writing assignments. You'll have your legal writing class, right? You'll have memos due. You'll have briefs due on top of everything else. There are a lot of responsibilities that you're going to have. And it gets overwhelming, right? I'm saying, do this, do this, do this. you need to find a way to sort of make peace with your own schedule. It works differently for everyone else. Some people work well in the library. Some people come in the morning and stay in the library all day and leave at night. Other people work well at home, right? Other people sort of stack to work up on the weekends. You have to find what works best for you. I can't tell you what that is. And the rub of law school is you have very little ramp up time. That is, you don't have a lot of time to figure it out. Today's Friday. Monday comes on Monday, and you have to go at the gate, right? You don't have much time to figure things out. Before you know it, you're gonna have a midterm, and then you have a final. And I'm sure you know this in law school, for better or worse, your final grade is your grade. Whatever you get in the final is your grade. 100%. The midterm doesn't count. No homework. No. Some professors have maybe class participation. It's very, very minimal. It's your final. So you have a very narrow moment to sort of define your grades. But also you have to take care of yourself. And I always try to make this point very clearly. Don't forget your friends and your family. They are very important. I always love graduation because I get to see their families, and we always thank them. Thank you for being so supportive. Work out, go to the gym, relax, eat well. Don't harm yourselves. I don't say this lightly, but students have issues where they harm themselves. I never like those phone calls. If you see if your friends who are saying things that are weird and they're saying they're saying things that are off, tell us. We can help. But you need to figure out the best way to manage your own schedules, to keep up with your coursework, to engage with networks, to get to know your professors. And most of our students do it well, and they love it. But here comes the but. Some of them don't. I don't need to tell you this. There's an attrition, right? At the end of the first year, some students flunk out. A couple of you will not be here next year. I don't like to put the fear of God in you, but I have to. And those are not the kids who are necessarily the smartest or the stupidest. No, it's generally the people who flunk out are those who do not put the time into it. I can see it by the midterm, right? By the midterm, I can see already who's sort of slipping off, right? Professors know. Don't let that happen to you. How do you avoid it? Seek help. If you're in class and your professor is talking something and you have no idea what's going on, and the person next to you raises their hand and makes a question, just says, what did they ask? Don't stay quiet. That's what too many students do. They stay quiet. And if you stay quiet, we can't help you, right? I can't tell you how many times I have a student I've never once seen after class and they pull a D in my class. I have no idea who they are. And I see, oh, they got a D. Who are they? Right? They bombed the midterm, never came to talking about it. I've had students who never even pick up their midterms. They never pick up the damn thing. What am I going to do? So get to know your professors. We're here to help you. You chose law schools well. We care deeply about each one of our students. That's why we give you so much difficulty, right? I'm trying to give you grief today to get ready for Monday. I'm actually a nice person. Well, maybe not a nice person. I don't know. You can judge that later, perhaps. But I and everyone else in this building have your best interest deep at heart. All right. I have a couple minutes left. What time's your next thing? You're done after this? All right. Well, I'll stay and answer questions. So what do you got? If you need to leave at 12:15, that's fine. But I'm happy to answer your questions. So go ahead. Yes, that's Sarah. Okay. Yeah. Not really. Not really. One of these use examples. So you might say, a reasonable process of taking the animal means you could get it within, the reach of your arm, right? I've had students give the answer for like if you're within an arm's reach, right? Or maybe within the reach of a stride, right? You can use some objective factor, body length, for example, to see how close you are. I'm trying to think. Students have answered that in the question in the past in creative ways. That might be one way of doing it. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Could reasonable mean like a better chance than not?
So you're gonna study torts this semester. You got your torts book ready, and one of the concepts in torts is the reasonable person standard, right? So with negligence, if there's some, you fail to clean this ice off your sidewalk, right? Would a reasonable person think that you have some duty to clean the ice off your sidewalk? Yeah, I think so, right? So you have this entire sense of what is reasonable, and you'll spend weeks on this topic. So I don't want to get too far ahead, but there's many different ways of measuring it. Yes, sir.
How do you
say, I don't know, in like a way where like you understand the material.
Yeah.
Like just, I guess. the
Yeah.
Question would be.
Yeah. Look, so this is always the trap, right? You don't want to say I don't know because then it makes it seem like you didn't do the reading, right? Very often I will know that a student did the reading, but is struggling. And first off, don't lie, right? If you didn't do the reading, just say I'm not prepared. Don't fake it. So this is not you, Sophia, right? But a couple years ago, a guy sitting right over there, sorry, but he was sitting right over there, came in, and he actually came in a few minutes late. So I called him in first. This was going to happen. And he said something. I said, so what are the facts of the case? He's like, well, I'm like, well, those foxes. He's like, yeah, those foxes. And he said, oh, he shot him with a rifle. I'm like, were those facts in the case? And he's like, yes. I'm like, oh boy. So you had he's like, you weren't sure because yes, I saw you doubted yourself, which is fine. But I and my colleagues know the difference between someone who is unprepared and someone who is struggling. So you could say something perhaps like, I understood these three parts of the case, but this middle part really tripped me up. Give something so we know that you did your homework, but you're struggling.
Okay.
Like, don't just say I don't know, because then I can't gauge if I don't means I didn't do the reading or I'm just wasting your time. But just give something. And what most professors do is they'll kind of ask you other questions based on, so whatever you say, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question. You know how I do this, right? No matter what you say, whether he says or she says, I'm going to follow up. I don't use PowerPoint because I go completely based on what you all have. But don't let it seem that you're completely unprepared, that you did something in your, because it's hard material. This case is not easy. I know it. I read it every year. I'm like, what? And then I've read this case a million times. Hand somewhere over there. Yeah.
I feel, I guess, trepidation about taking a pause. Like the question you asked me was like, what's the rule? What's the issue? It was something that I had to think on for a second, but
No, the pause was good. I actually saw you were thinking. That's why I was like, okay, this is gonna be good.
Okay,
No. I actually know the difference between a pause of thinking versus a pause of, oh my God.
Okay, that's
Like, no,
a question.
this is funny, but your eyes actually kind of went up, which means you're thinking. So this is why Zoom sucks. Body language is very important. I know the facial characteristics of a student who is, oh, let me think this through versus, oh my God, what am I gonna do? Like they close their eyes, they just, this blank stare. You were thinking, you were fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's
Even if they can't, even if they interrupt you, you have to give something, right? Unfortunately, if you're in a court or a classroom, you'll be interrupted. Like some of you didn't get your sentence out. I interrupted you. I'm sorry. It's rude, but you were going somewhere I didn't want you to go. I mean, it's an art of asking questions to force you to go where I want you to go. And if you're fighting, I have to kind of like almost like a fox, kind of like corner you with all these questions. And that's what you learn. What other questions you'll have? Nothing. I'll be here for a few minutes. If you want to talk to me after class, I'll be right up the front. But I wish you all good luck. I'm in room 623. If you want to come by and say hi, I'm around. But I wish you all the good luck for the semester, and hopefully I'll see you at some point next year, maybe. Thank you. Thank you.